All right, hello. How's it going, guys?
Good.
Welcome.
All right.
Horror Fest, day 2. You guys having fun?
Yeah.
Everyone enjoying themselves. You can move up. Join us. You don't have to sit in the back.
Yes, please. Come close.
We're having a little hangout here. Ooh, I like your bag. That's awesome. Don't mind me, I'm shopping from you. Okay. Right. So anyways, we have Aaron here. Thank you so much for joining us this weekend.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So my name is Sam. I'm from Sin Asylum. It's a series here. We show horror movies, horror adjacent movies. We bring out celebrities. We have a lot of fun. It's monthly showings. And then
I'm Tiffany. I'm editor-in-chief of pophorror.com. And thank you, Aaron, so much for being here with us in
My pleasure.
Arizona, where we're all melting.
Yes.
Except for her, which I know. It's nice in here.
Well, everyone's freezing in here.
Yeah, I love it.
I love it.
Yeah. I spend half my life sweating, so.
I hear you. It's tough. It's bad in LA. It's worse here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, LA the weather's really nice right now.
Yes.
We were there like 2 weeks ago, and it was like 65.
Yeah, it's
sounds
perfect.
great.
This time of year is generally perfect.
Yeah.
And we came back here, and it was like 115.
It's like mid-October. Like, I don't know what's the weather. I'm over it.
It's wacky.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I don't either. So you first starred as Pyro in 2003's X2,
Yes,
and then again in 2006 X-Men: The Last Stand.
that's right.
So how was it to step back into Pyro's shoes for Deadpool versus Wolverine?
Yeah, it was a long stretch. It's about 20 years
Yeah.
in between.
Yeah.
But honestly, it was like riding a bike. You know, I know the character well. The character was foundational to my career. It's one of the very first roles that I ever did. I mean, I can't say it was difficult to get back into. You know, it was easy. You know, the adjustment that really had to be made was that Deadpool, unlike the original X-Men films, it's straight up comedy. It's just a satire. So,
Yeah.
you know, you have to switch gears a little bit, make the character a little bit bigger, a little bit more over the top. And so, yeah, I just rolled with that and went for it.
I had a question.
Yeah.
From X2 and The Last Stand, the different directors. I know
Yeah.
we were just talking about Deadpool. I want to go back to those.
Yeah.
How is that? Because you went from, Bryan Singer. So
They were radically different
Yeah.
films, and I've spoken to all kinds of fans who have different opinions.
Yeah.
They prefer one or the other. I fall into the camp of preferring X2. It was a superior film,
Absolutely.
in my opinion. But not everybody feels that way. You'd be surprised. I talked to a lot of fans who they're just like, X-Men 3, that was the one.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it just grabbed them. But obviously they were very, very different directors. Bryan Singer was, I think, very committed to the source material.
Mhm.
You know, I think he was really, really into it, and he absolutely had something specific that he wanted to say
yeah.
with with that franchise and make a film that was specifically about outsiders and about people who feel like they just don't fit in and need to find their family and need to find their community elsewhere.
Yeah.
You know, so that was the difference, and I know that X-Men 2 was a huge success at the time. It was one of the early movies that really sort of proved just how big these comic book films could be.
It was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously he was celebrated for that, and they were dying for him to direct X3. What ended up happening was he got offered Superman prior to X-Men 3 shooting.
Yeah.
And so 20th Century Fox got into a pissing match with whoever it was who wanted him for Superman.
Yeah.
And they basically told Bryan, you can't do both. And I don't think they had a good reason for it. I don't think it was because the schedules overlapped. I think it was literally because they didn't want to share him. They wanted him to be the director for their
Just this,
franchise. You
and
do
not another
X-Men.
one.
You don't do another comic
Yeah.
book film. So, and I think he, you know, his rejoinder was, you know, like, well, you don't own me. I can do both of them if I want
Yeah.
to, and it turned into just like a test of wills, and ended up being that they said, okay, fine, well, you're not doing both, and he said, okay, I guess not. I'm going to do Superman then.
Yeah.
And the rest is sad history.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because neither one of those worked out very well.
Yeah.
In my opinion, my humble opinion.
I'm sure a lot of people share that
Yes.
opinion.
Yeah. So it's too bad. I often wonder what could have been.
Mhm.
You know, what would X3 have been like? Not only, you know, first of all, from a selfish standpoint,
Mhm.
because for my character in particular, Pyro in X2, that's the most development that he ever gets,
Yes.
and it's the most interesting that he ever gets, and
Yeah.
you could sense that they wanted to go somewhere
Mhm.
with this kid. You know, it was
Yeah.
I didn't get a ton of screen time, but what I got, like, there was really something there, and it was a portrait. You know, as I said, the film's about outsiders.
Mhm.
And Pyro was very much an outsider amongst even outsiders.
Yeah.
Even when he goes to Professor X's school for gifted mutants, and everyone out, these kids are finally finding their community. But he's damaged in a way that even amongst them, he can't quite fit in.
Yeah.
You know, and he doesn't find someone to fit in with until he meets Magneto.
Mm.
You know, who understands him and understands the anger that he feels. And for the first time, you know, it's very, the way I looked at it was it's very much you're watching a young man become radicalized, right? This is what happens. You know, you find angry young men who have been hurt by something. They just have this anger. They don't know where to put it.
Mhm.
And somebody finds them and they say, I'll tell you where to put it.
Yeah.
It's these people that are to blame. You know, if you join me, come with me, we'll be family, and we'll fight this wrong together. You
Yeah.
know? So many people see Pyro as a villain. You know, I really see him as misguided in his own head.
Yeah.
He's the good guy. You know, he's fighting the people that hurt him and hurt the people that he cares about. So anyway, so all that really sort of meaty, interesting, nuanced stuff was in X2.
Yeah.
And I was really looking forward to X3
Yeah,
when
to see.
inevitably I thought, well, they will develop that even further because they've teed it up and we'll see it. And then I think with the changing of the guard,
Mhm.
they changed the director, they changed the writing team.
Yeah.
You know, so everything was completely flipped on its head, and I got the script for X3, and it was just like, oh, he's just an asshole. He's just
Yeah.
like, he's a villain, and he's kind of a dick.
Yeah.
And then we get this like climactic fire and ice fight where I just get headbutted by Iceman, and that's
And that was
end.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I personally, on a personal level, I was very disappointed,
Yeah.
you know, by that. And then also the film, from an audience standpoint, I watched the film and it didn't have any of that nuance. It didn't have any of that really strong depth of character building that X2 had. So yeah, X3 was a bummer for me.
Yeah.
I wasn't
Yeah.
crazy about it. Not that I don't want to kill it too much for anybody here.
For those who like
who
it,
loves
sorry.
X3. Everyone to each their
Yeah.
own. But that was my personal experience with
Yeah.
Does anybody in the audience have any questions?
So for Pyro, what did you find like the most relatable aspect about his character? Like to you personally, do you think he's similar to you, or was it really a character you put on?
There's just like any character, there are things that are similar and things that are very, very different. And yes, you always look for the parallels that you can find and sort of, you know, try to stretch your way to the rest of it that you don't relate to. But I would certainly say that, you know, as I said, this idea of being an outsider, I very much I absolutely related to that. That's very much how I felt growing up. I grew up in a small town and was definitely one of the kids who just, I didn't really fit in. I couldn't really find my crowd. And it wasn't until much later in life that I did sort of find my way to that. So I could definitely, I could see the way the John Allardyce character, the Pyro character, felt, and that he felt hurt and lonely and vulnerable, and he masked all of that vulnerability with this sort of asshole-ish, arrogant bravado, and lashed out violently. But yeah, I think the core of it, that vulnerability was something that I could relate to, and just sort of, put my intention towards that and stretch my way to the rest of it.
So you just mentioned that you grew up in like a small town.
Yeah.
So how did you get like into acting? Did you always want to? Did you kind of?
Yeah, I never considered it as a realistic option.
Yeah.
Really, I did like very small like community theater and little like school plays and things like that, and I enjoyed it, and it was one of the very few things that I felt like I was good at. That was the thing that I could do, and afterwards people would come up and they'd be like, hey, yeah, you're pretty good at that, and that felt great.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't a jock, I wasn't really good at that. I loved reading and books and literature and storytelling, but I also wasn't one of the academic kids. I wasn't into like mock trial or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that was sort of my world. That was the sphere that I felt like I had any accomplishment in at all. But I certainly didn't feel like that was something that I could do. I come from Westford, Massachusetts. Nobody's in the industry. There's absolutely no way in at all. But what ended up happening was I went to a summer program at Boston University, and it was like a sort of like a version of their BFA, Bachelor of Fine Arts training program for actors, which I didn't even know existed. I didn't know you could go to college for acting.
Yeah.
It's just that was like crazy to me.
Yeah.
But that was something was suggested to me, and I went to this summer program, and they started teaching us method acting, and they started teaching us technique, and they started teaching us movement and voice, and I was just like, wow, this is like.
Yeah.
This is something you can do, and it's like, and you can like train to do it and get better at it, and then maybe this is a pipeline, to actually maybe doing this as a career. So I ended up going to a college, Rutgers. It was Mason Gross School of the Arts. Yeah, all right.
Well, New Brunswick, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And they have a fantastic program, really, really good program. And I did like a study abroad program in London.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I think even at that point, I was never somebody with stars in their eyes. I was never like, now I'm gonna go out and conquer show business.
Right.
I was always just like, and maybe I can study this, and maybe with this degree, I'll be able to fall back on teaching.
Yeah.
And do the theater that I love.
Right.
And, maybe do some small I just never honestly had a lot of bravado, and frankly just never. I was never a person who believed in myself that much. But what I did have was grit. And I never thought like things are going to be fantastic, but I did know that like I could gut out a lot of things and I could take a lot of things. So I knew that like, all right, if I end up in New York City, which is the place I want to be, I don't really care how low I have to live. You know, like I can do that. You
Yeah.
know, I can live with like nothing, and I can live in like a rat hole apartment, and
Which you would definitely find in New York.
which
I'm from there, so yes.
which I lived in, you know,
Yeah.
and I can work a day job, and I can grind, and I can do the thing that I love, and just tough it out. And so that's where I started, and did that. Lived in a little hole in the wall, and worked, you know, a job in service, and did off Broadway, and did little tiny, you know, little. I would do like not even independent films, like, you know, like student productions and stuff
Okay,
like
yeah.
that, and then gradually worked my way up, and in 2001, I think it was, was my big break, and my big break was an independent film called Tadpole, and I went in for this audition, and it was for the role of a young private school kid. It was a comedy. A private school kid who falls in love with his stepmother, and it turned out that the role of the stepmother was going to be played by Sigourney Weaver. So I went in for this audition, and once again, you know, as I said about my mindset, I was like, well, I'll never get this in a million years. It's too good to be true. And I went in for the first audition, and they liked me. They called me back for another audition, and then another audition, and then another audition. They called me back 5 times.
Wow.
And because I was totally untested, and they don't like to give big roles to untested people, it's just not really done.
Yeah.
And the final audition was with Sigourney Weaver in the room, and I hardly remember it because I was so blacked out with like blind panic and terror.
Right? It's Sigourney Weaver, like,
Yeah,
hello.
but I just know that like I went to some place within myself. Like part of the blackout was that I blocked out everything that was happening. I didn't see anyone else in the room. I just saw her, and just tried to. I just kept that core focus on what I had prepared and the performance that I wanted to give, and just try to make everything else go blank. And I went in and read with her, and it was a scene that gets a little bit emotional between the two of them, and we read, and I was doing everything that I had been trained to do in acting school, which was just focus straight on her.
Yeah.
And just do everything to, for, and off of your partner, and just be in it, react to what she's saying. Don't have a preconceived notion of what you want to do and pre-plan it. Don't be robotic, be in the moment, and all that stuff was happening. Like I could feel it happening, and emotion was kindling in me, and then like the thing happened that was supposed to happen in the scene, and you just felt it. And then that was the end of it, and the audition was over, and it was one of those moments when you really like stick the landing in an audition, you know it.
Yeah.
There's people in the room, they're just silent.
Yeah.
And you can just feel that that it's resonating with everybody. And I looked around at all the faces, because all the producers were in there, because each successive time I came back for an audition, there was more people in the room, and more people in the room, and the stakes got higher and higher and higher and higher. So now everybody's in this room. And I just looked around, and people were smiling at me. People were just beaming at me. And I was just like, I fucking think I got this.
Yeah.
And that's the job that opened the door to everything that came after it. That's what opened the door to X2 and everything else.
I love that story.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I love that.
I have tears in my eyes.
Like Sigourney Weaver on your very
Like,
first
holy
like,
shit.
It was incredible, yeah.
Dude, who
Yeah.
wouldn't be intimidated?
Yeah, and she gave me a big smile too, obviously, because the other thing is, you know, people knew that they knew what a break this was for me. So like the fact that I had been able to get through the gauntlet, the various auditions, and not choke. And make it like they, you know, because everyone started out, Sigourney had her start too, you know, so she was looking at a young actor as she once was, knowing like, this is big for you.
She wasn't always Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah.
You know, she wasn't always like.
Yes. Everybody started somewhere. Yeah.
Right.
You also starred in Alexandra Aja's remake of Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes, which
Sorry.
that's
I'm
my
like,
pick.
I hear
That's
Danny
my partner,
clapping.
we're huge Alexandra Aja fans.
He's great, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
We met because of High Tension. Like,
Okay. Do
yeah.
you guys, what do you know about him? Do you know much about Alex Aja?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm sure she has tidbits
Except
of.
that him and Gregory, like they grinded hard to make High Tension.
Yes.
And there's a lot of those scenes in that movie where they only had one take.
Yeah.
And then for them to have the opportunity to do the remake
Yep.
of The Hills Have Eyes. Like
They're
that-
very hard workers, real grinders. But what's really interesting to me about Alex, and once you know this about him, a lot of the way his movies are, it makes sense. Is that Alex is a French director. He grew up in Paris, and his father is a famous art house film director in Paris. So he makes beautiful art films. So Alex Aja grew up in this world, and so was sort of steeped in this art house aesthetic, but also grew up loving bloody, gory slasher films.
Which I'm thankful for.
So
Yes.
all of the films he makes, High Tension, Hills Have Eyes, are both great examples of this. They're bloody, bloody, nasty horror films with a beautiful art house aesthetic. The cinematography is absolutely
Yes.
gorgeous. There's a depth to the storytelling. There's great character development. So sort of like the marriage of that, art house cinema world with horror creates this elevated mashup, that he's the master of.
I love that.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved in the making of The Hills Have Eyes?
That was one that just sort of happened. It just came to me. That was one. I was already established at this point. This is long after Tadpole. This is after X2, maybe before X3. I don't remember.
Well, do you know when I'm sure she knows the year. The Hills Have
Yeah,
Eyes.
I do think it's between.
I think it's between. I
Sorry.
think maybe Hills Have Eyes was 06 or 04, and X3 was 06. But it was just one of those ones that came through as an offer, and I read the script and I was like, okay, yeah, it seems cool. You can't always tell from the script how something is going to turn out, but this one was interesting. I watched the original from Wes Craven, and I saw the original Doug character, who's pretty bizarre. He's pretty out there, and I was like, okay, that's who they want me to be. The original, and also the original Hills Have Eyes is like super low budget. It doesn't get more. They had like $5 to make.
Yeah.
So it looked.
If that.
Yeah, so it looked quite rough. So also I was like, I don't know if this movie makes me want to do this remake. But then they showed me High Tension, and High Tension, really, you could see there was something very, very special there. So I said, okay, let's do it. And I had read the script, and it takes place in the deserts of New Mexico, where they tested all these nuclear bombs, and it has given rise to these mutant cannibals who terrorize tourists who come through the desert. So I was all ready to head off to New Mexico to shoot this, and they said, okay, here's your plane ticket to Morocco. I said, okay, what? And they said, yes, they're gonna double the deserts of Morocco for the deserts of New Mexico. I said, okay, why? And
Yeah.
they said, well, Alex Aja, his mother is Moroccan, and he grew up going to Morocco every summer. He knows it very, very well. This is going to be the entire crew is mainly going to be European, because Alex and Gregory wanted to work with the other European filmmakers that they had already made. I guess it's easier for them just to get to Morocco. So I ended up flying out to Morocco for like 2 months. Shooting this movie on the one hand and having this incredible adventure on the other hand, going to this like absolutely alien and exotic place. It was a place called Ouarzazate. It's where they shot Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh,
It's
nice.
where they shot the desert planet scenes from Star Wars.
Okay.
She's like geeking out.
Yeah, so
I get it.
it's like known as it's like Morocco's Hollywood, because anybody who wants to shoot desert scenes, particularly the ones where they have that it's all dune, where it's like fine pumice.
Yes.
You can get there from Warsaw. So a lot of people who want that dune look, that's where they go. But even though it's the Hollywood of Morocco, like there's nothing there. It's like a community right on the edge of the Sahara Desert, and there's like 2 hotels there, and nobody ever stays in those hotels unless there happens to be a production there, you know. And productions come, like sometimes they'll have several productions in a year, sometimes they'll have one or none.
Wow.
So it's not, the place is not really built up, but the industry is filmmaking. So you'll see all these houses from crew members, people who make their money from filmmaking, and they build their house in stages. So they'll build the first floor, cinder block, and you'll see like this half constructed cinder block house. They're waiting for the next movie
Right.
to get shot so they can complete
Wow.
their house. So yeah, it was a strange place.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm like,
Do you have a
yes.
She's geeking out over
Yeah,
there.
what?
Danny.
Star Wars, Alexander Aja, High Tension, all in one. like-
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like you said that you know, like, you watched the original before you went and shot your movie. Was there anything that you read in the script that you were like, okay, that is possibly crossing the line for me?
I don't know that anything jumped out. I knew the kind of movie it was. You know what I mean? I knew it was going to be, I knew it was going to be gnarly. And I don't think there was anything. I just sort of like accepted that. I said that's the type of movie this is. I think Alex said his main, aside from the original Hills Have Eyes, his main inspiration was a cross between the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and a film called Straw Dogs.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of the sexual violence, which is the most stomach turning
Yeah.
part of the
It's
movie.
pretty reprehensible.
It's
It's a hard watch for a lot of
reprehensible
people.
is the right word, and I think that the quality of it being hard to watch and making you squirm and question whether why should I even be watching this, and why am I coming to a film? Do I enjoy this? And like you're meant to have that moral inventory, which is exactly what they did with Straw Dogs. It was the same thing. And Straw Dogs has that sort of stomach turning sexual violence in it. Which is intended to make the audience uncomfortable, So I definitely knew that was coming, and just trusted that it was going to be done with intention that made it worth doing. That it wasn't being done as torture porn. It was being done to make a statement.
How did you prepare for that kind of? That must be difficult, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't. I luckily didn't have to be part of the. being right there, but I did have to walk in on the aftermath.
Right. Yeah.
And that is a very difficult thing to do. To go from 0 to $1 million, to like walk into a trailer and like it's your wife.
Yeah.
Dead, gutted on the floor, who you spent your entire life, so like as an actor, you have the work with a situation like that is you really have to build that history in your own mind, and you have to attach your own relationships and memories to what's happening in the imaginary world in the script, So I had to find a parallel relationship, to who this who, you okay? Yeah? Are you just freezing, or?
I am really cold.
Why don't you go out somewhere, go get some sun?
I'm trying to warm up.
Yeah. You look like you're in bad shape.
Yeah.
Go get some sun.
Go get warm.
Seriously.
We're splitting up in here.
Yeah. Please go get some sun.
My daughter like X-rayed the whole thing. Come on, like I'll just bundle up all over
Yeah.
somewhere.
Let's go. Come on.
Yes, get her out of here, please. Come on.
It's hot outside.
It's an ice box in
God,
here.
It is. I've been freezing all day now.
Yeah.
Jeez. We can walk around.
Yeah. She's been handling me all day. She's very, very good. So yeah, it's just you have to deepen your connections to this imaginary world, and you do that by bringing in your real world and tying those things together. And that's about all the preparation you can do. But
Yeah.
so much of acting happens in the moment, and
Yeah.
you just sort of have to open yourself and roll with it. And there really is, preparation's important, but there's a limit to how much you can prepare, and you can make mistakes with that as well. There's a lot of actors who will
Overly.
you will
Prepare.
over prepare.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say there are a lot of actors who do it. All actors do it at certain stages, in their career. You want to be the best you can and do the best you can, and you don't want to leave anything to chance, and you want to prepare everything. But the difficulty is that you'll read something in a script and you'll have an idea of how this thing is going to happen and how it's going to go down, and you'll try to plan out like the blocking, where am I going to be, and how am I going to say that, and what sort of affectation will I have, and and then you get into the actual space, and the layout is completely different.
Yeah.
And you had this idea that you were going to sit on the table and tent your hands and just rest, and just have a breakdown at the table. Well, there's no table. All of
Yeah.
a sudden that's not the way the set is. So you have to come up with a new thing. So much of it really is like you prepare as much as you can, and then you show up and you just take in what is happening, and you adapt to the circumstances, and you adapt to what your partner is giving you. And that's the other huge part of it, is that you can read a line and think of a line of how am I going to deliver this line, and you can think too much about that, and then you get into the scene and your partner delivers their cue line in
Yeah.
this completely unexpected way that you had never imagined, and it will entirely alter your performance.
Yeah.
So much of it is just being there in the moment.
Yeah.
So we have time for one more question.
You've mentioned doing live theater a couple times.
Yeah.
What's the difference in your process, like preparing for that versus preparing for film?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. That's where the theater is all preparation.
Yeah.
So the fight with theater is to keep it fresh and keep that, to try to somehow make it slightly new and unique every night. Because with theater, the great thing about it and the difficult thing about it is you have all the time in the world to prepare. You'll hear about people rehearsing for film and television. Like they're not real rehearsals. Like that means you will read this scene with your partners right before the first take.
Yeah.
That's not a real rehearsal. In theater, you're taking a story, you're taking an entire script, 150 pages, whatever it is, from beginning to end, and you are memorizing this story from beginning to end, and you know every single line you have, and by the end of it, you know pretty goddamn much
Everyone
every
else's,
single
yep.
person's line. You know what's going to happen. You take weeks, if not months, to block this thing and figure out exactly where you are going to go, where you're going to set, how you're going to move from point A to point B, and you set this show. So with theater, you have the ability to figure out how exactly it's going to be, which is a luxury, and it's fantastic, and you can find a freedom within that because you become so it becomes so ingrained, it gets so into your blood that you end up having an ease and a facility with it. But again, what can happen is if you're in a long run of a play, there is the danger that it gets stale. because it's just the same thing repeated over and over again. So that's the real fight with theater, is to try to keep that spark, try to keep it alive, try to keep it fresh by just playing with your scene partner, delivering the line a little bit differently than you did the night before, taking a little more of a pause, whatever it is to keep it fresh. And with film and television, where there's no ability to prepare, the struggle is yet to make it seem seamless when really you're just like stumbling through it, trying to figure out like how does this scene work, and often you never get through an entire scene in the day making it work. You just end up making various moments work and happen, and then they piece that together in the editing. A scene that never worked when you were shooting it, but you got this one moment that really worked. That one moment really worked. This moment never worked. It's gone. They cut it out. And they make it happen. And so that's the trick with film and television. And then sometimes my favorite is when you see like a hybrid of the two. You'll see this in films. Quentin Tarantino is someone who loves to do this because he really loves his actors. You'll see a lot of scenes where Quentin Tarantino shoots a wide shot, and you'll see Wes Anderson does this a lot too. You'll see them shooting a wide shot where 2 or 3 characters, they do the whole scene in a wide shot, and maybe he tracks a little bit, maybe he follows them, but in a situation like that, that is something where for sure they had like roughly theater style rehearsals, and they rehearsed that many times to get it right. And I love seeing that on screen. I think one of the most famous versions of it is you guys ever see Birdman?
Yes.
Yeah, so something like that you have to rehearse that like theater, and something like that's extraordinary.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Aaron. We appreciate
You got it.
you coming.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Stop by his table. I don't know if it's closed now, but he'll be here tomorrow.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.